You're listening to Table for Five with Felicia and Annette, only on LA Talk Radio.
You've seen The View. You've heard all the real talk. Now have a seat at our table. A table for five. Now have a seat at our table. A table for five.
Good morning. Good Wednesday morning.
Oh, I almost said Monday.
See,
It
happens to the best of us.
It does happen. Good Monday. Oh, I
See
did it
you.
again. Good Wednesday. Good Wednesday morning.
Good
Yes.
morning, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to Table for Five with Felicia and Annette.
Yay.
I'm Felicia.
I'm Annette.
There she is. And it is Wednesday, October 10th.
Yeah.
Here we're back live in the
I
studio.
know,
We took a little break.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need a little break or two.
Life was happening to all of us.
Yes.
And it's all good.
Yeah.
But we're back.
We are back
We're
now.
back with a great show.
A great show. Very exciting show. So welcome, everyone. You are at Table for Five. If you're wondering, like, what in the world is going on? Where did you just go, come from? Here you are. Where you, the listening and viewing audience, are always going to have a seat right here at this table, our table, Table for Five.
Yeah.
So we have a great show for you today. But we're going to do some housekeeping.
Yeah, we always
before
do
we get into
our housekeeping and letting you know how to follow us, where to find us, and all of our social media platforms. You could find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and our website, which I like to call our one-stop shop. And there you can find out about all of our information, how we got started. The gallery page has all our past shows. And if you would like to advertise with us, there's a page and a tab that you can hit, and gives you all the information about our tiers, and then someone really professional will contact you. Also, we would like for you to subscribe. You can subscribe to
Yes.
our newsletter that goes out right before each show. So that way you know who's going to be on the show. It also has like little tidbits, like it was Hispanic
Yes.
Heritage Month.
Yes, happy
Now it's-
Hispanic Heritage Month this
And
month.
now we
Breast
are
Cancer Awareness
Breast
Month.
Cancer Awareness Month. So there's a lot of information in the newsletter. It's pretty cool. It's well done. I love it. It's very
beautiful.
professional.
Yes,
We're
and
we're
professional.
doing the most here. We are doing the most.
Yes, we're trying.
So, yeah.
And it only goes out twice a week,
Yeah.
so it's not like you're going to get,
No.
mail every day
No,
or
no, no,
anything
no,
like
no,
that.
no.
And if
Not
you
at
are
all.
subscribed, check your spam mail, because I
Yes.
know a lot of you have said, I'm subscribed, but I'm not getting it.
Yes.
Check your junk mail. Make sure to put it on your safe little notification thing or whatever that is, so you'll get it. But it's a fun, easy way to find out what we're talking about
Yes.
that coming up Monday. And if you're interested, if you're not interested, then don't worry about
And
it.
What's really
And then
cool about
you can
the
listen.
sorry to interrupt, but what's really cool about the newsletter also is like it has like if you want to know more about what we're going to talk about today, you can just click on her image or click on her link on her website. It's full of information about our guests.
Yeah.
So you can kind of like be prepared to know what's going on and then be
Yes.
connected. So yeah,
And
check
stay
out.
and jumping in the conversation if you want to.
Yes, and we're live right now on Facebook. So if you are watching us on LA Talk Radio, you could go to our Facebook at Felicia and Annette, Table for Five, and leave us a question if you have one about
Yeah.
today's conversation.
Or join in the conversation on Facebook. We'll try to get to it.
I
Since
know,
we're not really
sometime-
doing hot topics anymore, you guys
know.
aren't really like
Not
knowing-
invested in
yeah.
chiming in our opinions, but it is an interesting topic.
Yes, it's a great topic today. Today we have an interesting topic with special guest Kathryn Schotthoefer. Schotthoefer. I'm sorry. I told her I wasn't going to try to do it, but I did it, kind of, sort of.
Hey, that was a good effort.
Right? Thank you.
I've heard them all. So.
I'm sure. I'm so sure. I'm so sorry. But anyway, she's the founder of Original Media Ventures, and we are going to be discussing diversity in entertainment and media today. This is a new venture for you, and you can get more information on her website, Media Ventures. Sorry, it looks like Adventures.
Oh,
Original Media Ventures.com. I just came off of Adventures, so I'm like in a mode of adventures.
There's a short version, which is a lot easier, which is just weareomv.com.
okay.
Oh.
We are OMV. .com. Okay.
Okay, we'll put that up on the
We'll put that
website
up,
because
yeah,
that might be easier
and
to
on
see.
Facebook too. Yeah, we are omb.com.
So
Okay.
yes, good morning, welcome.
And she's
Kathryn.
actually a friend of the show. She's been on our show twice before when we were on audio.
Yep.
So now you get to see the beautiful face to the sultry voice.
Yes.
And so Kathryn has been with us, so we're really excited to have her back. You've come in two different topics when you've been with us. So now that you're back, you're on this new venture, and I have a million questions.
Great.
And so we're going to jump right on in.
Yes. Do you want to talk to us and tell us about what
Yes.
this is about
Sure.
and why you decided to change or do this?
So I've worked in entertainment for a long time in a number of different capacities. I've worked on the television side, I've worked on the film side, I've worked on the agency side, at studios, at production companies. But more and more over the years, it's become glaringly obvious that what we see on our screens is not really representative of the world around us. And when you start to talk about things like representation in Hollywood, it's not a one-stop shop for a solution. There's a lot of existing systems and legacy and heritage that goes into kind of creating the system that we have now.
Right.
And at its core, one of the biggest issues is it's a hard industry to access because essentially you have to already be positioned socioeconomically in some way for a career.
Or know somebody, right? Like, isn't it all kind of like
Who
the
you know.
classic
Know somebody,
who you know?
but then it's also, there's a huge component around, and this goes for kind of all creative careers, they're risky, right? It isn't like, becoming a nurse or becoming an engineer where you have a really defined career path. You take these steps and you will achieve these things. There's not always, sorry Hollywood, a direct connection between talent and opportunity. And so one of the things that we've tried to solve for is how can we create a sustainable pipeline of opportunity for the industry, and that kind of goes both ways. Bringing people who don't live in New York and LA and can't afford to come and move and live here and try it out for a couple of years and see if things work. If you have a family, that's depending on you, making those kind of life changes just aren't possible.
Right. Because a lot of people do that. Let's pause for a second and talk about that. I mean, did you see a need, or did you say like there are a lot of people that move uproot their families? I mean, I think if it's the parents and they're doing it for their kids, at least they're having a job. But if you're the adult and wanting to still pursue your career and you have a family, like, what do? You have to like. Are there a lot of, I guess, transplants is what we say? People moving into LA and New York from different parts of the country to pursue this?
Oh, absolutely. But it tends to start much younger, and there tends to be a very specific profile that people fit when they move here. You tend to find a lot of people who come from affluent suburbs of big cities, who went to college and who can kind of afford to take a risk. They've had interesting internships. They have big networks, both professional and personal. And I'm not saying that there aren't outliers, but the work that people have to put in that kind of don't fit that profile is really disproportionate to the people who do fit that profile, who come in kind of, with the door already open versus those who kind of have to fight their way through it. And when you start in the industry, most people start at a really junior role. They start as an assistant. They start by answering the phone somewhere. There's kind of the legendary idea of working in the mailroom. Which, especially when I was coming up, like that was what everybody did. My first job was for Dick Clark, and
But I think growing up here, that's something that we definitely take for granted. Those opportunities, and not just like for people moving here, but like just living here. It's just what we live. Like my first job was in an entertainment law firm where my aunt worked as the receptionist. And so I was working in the mailroom, and Marlon Brando's younger son was working there that summer. Both of us. He's a little bit older than me, but it was no big deal, but you don't think about those kinds of things. In someplace else, you're not going to. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No. And when I was working, my last job before starting this venture, I ran a digital creative firm, and we did a lot of content and campaigns for people like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and Warner Brothers and Fox, and we had this amazing list of clients, and we're doing all kinds of cool stuff. And then we got this really unusual call for a project, and it was going to involve our team traveling around the country and talking to young people, parents, and community leaders about education. So we're storytelling people. We come from entertainment, we're like, what do we know about education? But what we do know is how to talk to people about like what's in their hearts and minds. And so, and the person who hired us for this job, I think that's what they were looking for. Like, can we get to that core idea? So as we were around the country in places like Southside Chicago, rural Alabama, border towns in Texas, we heard a consistent story again and again. And it was young people who aspired to creative careers. They wanted to be writers, photographers, directors, content creators of some kind, musicians, parents who wanted them to have a job with health insurance, and community leaders who would say the biggest opportunities in our community are at the post office, the Walmart, and the chicken processing plant.
Wow.
And so there was a very real disconnect between what the young people wanted and what the opportunities were, and you could see where that was really contributing to a sense of hopelessness. And what we would see was immense amounts of talent that, you know, we as an agency in Hollywood would pay somebody a lot of money to make stuff for on behalf of a big client or brand, and yet a lot of these people weren't being paid in any way. And, you know, you kind of go through that idea of, you know, should we, you know, hire people and bring them to LA, and, you know, and then the more time you spend with their families, it's like, no, because this young woman who's making these incredible videos is responsible for babysitting for her sister's children when her sister goes to work at the hospital tonight. And all, you know, there were just all
You
of
can't
these
take
things.
them away. You take them out of there. Can't pluck them.
Absolutely. And it was like, and then you kind of have that moment of course, and then we're contributing to talent drain where, you know, can we sort of flip this system around, look for ways to put opportunity into other communities in a scalable and meaningful way, and then, you know, look for ways for Hollywood and then subsequently, you know, the people who consume the content that comes out of Hollywood to have the benefit of those stories, because every single time someone says, like, I just can't take that risk, we lose the benefit of having that story and that creative perspective.
So, okay, so just so that we understand the structure of your company, so you go to them wherever they are, or do they submit?
At the heart of everything that we do is...
Okay, so wait, before you, are you doing both still? Because I know
we're doing it all.
Okay, so you still have the other company that you were...
the other agency, no. We've left that company.
This company has 3 components, because I saw. So that's where I wanted to get to.
But I wanted to make sure that, because she was hired through the company that she was doing, and then you saw this need, and you were like, okay, we're going to stop doing that, what we were doing, and now we're going to start something new and focus on this.
Right. Actually, all of the women on the executive team from the old company, we decided, you know, it was something we needed to do, but it was not a traditional agency type of job. And so it was going to require us stepping away from our previous job. And that's the risk on our part, right? You know, as a single mom, you have that moment of like, oh my God, do I actually do this? Am I about to leave a fairly secure job and, you know, one that gives me a lot of comforts, you know, in my daily life, and walk away and try to do something completely new. And, you know, it wasn't just me that answered yes to that, but it was every other woman on our executive team. And so,
that's fantastic.
It's awesome because we have a team of people who know how to work together, who, you know, who partner together well, and whose skills complement one another really well. So what we built at its core is a community that we call Represent. And the website for that is heretorepresent.com. And what Represent does is offers resources and support for people no matter where you are. All you have to be is over the age of 13 for legal reasons, and have an internet connection, and you can access any of these resources. And so what those are intended to take the place of are kind of like the lunch and learns that people who have access to the industry get to do. You know, when you come in and it's like, oh yeah, you know, my cousin wants to come to LA and get a job. Well, I'm going to hook her up with all of these people that I know and just get to know them, get to know a little bit about the business, the lingo, that kind of stuff. So we're trying to fill some of that culture gap. Explaining really basic things, you know, like what does a development process look like? You know, what are all these terms? You know, like we love our lingo in this business. And so, like, what do some of these things actually mean?
And you can get that information from this website. Is this something that you have to sign up for?
Subscribe to?
You register. It's 100% free.
Wow. Okay.
All you have to do is just sign up for the website, and you'll start getting emails about once a week, and then you have access to our portal, which should launch tomorrow. Which hosts all of these resources. There's a podcast that's available, and we do interviews with people from around the industry. We had someone on last night who's a television writer who's been working for about 10 years, and she's worked on shows like Prison Break and Bones, but you know, has great insight of like what it's actually like to work in a writer's room. Because as a television writer, there's a lot of people who think like you just sit at home and you write a script and then you bring it and then they shoot that, and like that's not what happens.
So these are kind of like tutorials.
tutorials, but also,
the tools of the trade.
conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we're adding more and more stuff every day. We're adding stuff about like, what does IP mean? Like your intellectual property. How do you protect your ideas? Because when people are
Very
new
important.
to the business, especially if you don't have a support network around you already in the business, there is such a high vulnerability to people who are predatory, who are happy to take your idea and tell you
run
a bunch
with
of
it.
great stuff and then turn around and sell it to somebody and not include you. And so, trying to fill in all of those gaps. And so that community is also a place where people can connect with one another, where they can collaborate with one another. But basically, as a supportive, inclusive, creative community. And then the other components of the company are, we have a partners group, and that partners group goes out to brands, big brands, and works with them to develop creative programs that would then hire the people from the Represent community. So no matter where you are in the country, again, like you don't have to be in somebody's office to do a creative brainstorm. You don't have to be, in LA to come up with an interesting piece of content. And especially for brands that are looking to reach younger people, I think they've all kind of realized, you can't hire somebody who's an affluent 55-year-old, Caucasian to come up with like, what's the best plan to reach teen Latinas? But because we have not, as an industry, had a legacy of hiring, incubating, and allowing diverse creatives to thrive, there just isn't that generation that's, people can look to. There isn't a place where you can call and say, hey, we'd like to pull together this really exciting, diverse group of creatives with some oversight for people who have delivered for big brands before. And so the young people then get the benefit of, what does it look like to work on a creative project? What kind of feedback am I going to get? Working through a process about things like working against a brief. And then they get paid for that work. And they have it on their resume. So that's our partners group. And then our studio side has a development fund to develop film, television, and digital series. And our focus there is on really interesting, entertaining, exciting, inclusive stories. So right now on our slate, the majority of our projects are stories led by women, and our focus is on projects that reach a younger audience. And so we've got a lot of YA, teen type of projects. But the idea is to really show interesting young women with agency over their own lives, but that anybody wants to watch, right? My parents who were in their 60s and 70s in Michigan would still find this content interesting because they're just a good story is a good story.
So let's say you produce a project under your studio division. So where do we see it? Does it go on YouTube? Do you sell it?
We are brand new, but we have been really lucky that most of the major distributors of content, the SVOD services, the networks, film studios, have already approached us about having discussions about the projects that we're developing.
Great. So you already have
the connections
to submit and say, this is what we have on the docket. And
we can essentially be a conduit for, if there is a person with an amazing story. And through Represent, we do offer pitch opportunities. So if you have, and we'll have specific asks if we're looking for a comedy series or we're looking for a film at this point. And we'll open up submissions, allow people to pitch, but you don't have to be here. You don't have to have those connections. You can just pitch to us. And then, sometimes what you have is a story that's a really interesting idea, but where you have a script that needs a lot of work. And so what we're able to do is then partner that person with somebody who has the experience, but respecting them as the originator, catalyst of that, and allowing them to remain in the process all the way through. And so it's not a situation.
Is that like a representation type? So are you kind of representing them?
No, we are not talent managers. No, we're creative collaborative partners.
Okay, so you put them kind of in touch, and they should have the knowledge already behind to figure out how they stay in that loop?
Well, they would stay because you stay with the project.
Right.
They don't let it go. Okay. It's not like a pass through. They're part of it.
Okay.
Yeah. We remain involved throughout the life cycle of the process. And so, but it allows us to then make sure that the original creative voice is respected. But also, it's funny because we hear all this stuff about inclusion writers and people being really proud of themselves for hitting like 7% women or something like that. And it's like, for us, our productions are inclusive. They are representative. Like we have more than 50% women as crew on the majority of our productions. We're very conscious of making sure that we're intentionally inclusive, and sometimes that means having uncomfortable conversations that people don't want to have.
Listen, we're all about that here.
Yeah,
Table
we're
for
really
Five.
happy to have those conversations.
You want an uncomfortable conversation? Come right here.
I know. So okay, so when I think of diversity, and here I put my little Latina hat, I think of Latinas, African Americans, Asians, Indians, Muslims. Is that part of your palette? Is that something that you guys have in your wheelhouse, in your company, and in your projects? Because when you say
And that
diversity,
you're searching for.
Yeah, because when you say diversity, I'm being just women is, for me, that's not diverse enough. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So our staff of our company, so our executive team is 100% female. Our staff is 98% female, 50% people of color, representing a large scope of experiences, right? But diversity to me means more than just gender or heritage. It means things like, being inclusive of people with different abilities, of people who come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, who have different experiences, of the LGBTQ community.
Right.
So I think we approach it really holistically. And one of the things that we're looking to do, like one of the projects we have that I am absolutely in love with, is we have a sitcom that's built around a group of young Latinas who have a startup, and they're working out of a WeWork in Texas. And it's like, when was the last time you saw an all Latina cast in a tech workplace comedy?
Yeah, never.
But that's what I feel like, let's show young women, because that exists, right?
And the diversity just within the cultural groups,
100%.
because there are so many cultural differences or diversity and differences just within different cultures.
Oh yeah,
100%.
for sure.
funny.
You put
It can be
3
funny.
Latinas in a room, and we all have different experiences.
100%. And I think that's one of the places, one of the conversations we had with one of the major studios recently was they have a project that they're really interested in, that they already have in-house. It's a very specific Mexican-American story. And they said, every writer that people keep sending us is like from Argentina, or, like is half Cuban and grew up in Connecticut, and they're like, it's just not, to represent the experience authentically, but people tend to assume that, if you have a Z in your name, then automatically you share this like universal representation of experience. Same thing like with Crazy Rich Asians, right? There are all those think pieces on like, but this isn't representing all experiences. And it's like, Asia is a massive continent. You want one rom-com to, absolutely hit the nail on the head for everybody. No, but if we had greater diversity in all of our content, there wouldn't be such pressure on one piece of content to represent for everybody.
Yeah, I get really, don't get me started.
Go ahead, start it up.
Well, no, I'm from New York, East Coast, Latina, moved to the West Coast, and immediately everybody assumed in the West Coast I was Mexican. Everywhere. I would go to sessions, or I would go to where I work. I mean, it was crazy. And I took offense to it, because I thought, how do you not know that there's
a difference?
There's a difference, and there's a greater pool of Hispanics in the world. Right. Obviously, living here now 25 years, I understand. But it was very offensive. And I find it sometimes even with programming that's, Caucasian programming that's now doing Latino shows, they still don't hit the mark. It's very, oh my God.
Put in this little box.
Yeah,
right
it
here.
does. It just,
go right there.
Oh my God. There was one show, I would have to say one show that was on NBC, I think it was, or ABC, I'm not really sure, that represented, it was still a Mexican, they always make it a Mexican family, but the actors weren't Mexican, which was cute, right? But they were all a whole Latino cast, and it was a really good show. And it was hitting on points of social issues in Hispanic families that were true and real and identifiable, and it was squashed in one season. And I don't know.
What was the name of the show? I don't remember.
It'll come to me. It was a great cast too. My question to you is funding. Funding for your company, and then funding for these projects, because I always feel like the networks and cable and all these people, 99.9% of it is driven by the money. Is this going to make money for me? Like most cables and all networks want to make money. So how do you guys manage that?
Because a good story is a good story, right? And if you have interesting characters and widely appealing stories, which is the kind of stuff that we're looking to do, it doesn't matter, like who the audience is, who's on screen, we can show a really diverse cast in an interesting, broad story, right? But I think one of the areas that historically people have gone wrong in this area of like quote diversity around town is they associate it with stuff that is always like hard hitting. We refer to them as like oppression porn pieces, right? And those are hard pieces to watch. And it can also be, really limiting in terms of who its audience is. And then it also contributes to how broad audiences view a specific group of people. So if they're always portrayed in these, as victims of oppression and of what, and absolutely not taking anything away from like the absolutely real existing systems of oppression that we have. Right. I think it's our obligation as the entertainment and media industry who shape perspectives around the world of what people are like to show a really broad set of experiences. So, I had a sort of interesting experience. So I'm Lebanese. I have a very kind of complicated extended family structure. I was married to a Cuban man for 10 years, and my last name was Perez. And everyone in LA suddenly treated me, and I looked way more Latina than my Cuban husband did, especially because my hair was dark at the time. And so all of a sudden, people started treating me differently.
When you changed your last name?
Well, and it was because they met me and they assumed I was Latina.
Wow.
And it was a kind of a weird experience, right?
Yeah.
But the assumptions that were being made were things like that my parents hadn't gone to college, or that I was a renter instead of a homeowner, and some of that kind of stuff. And so you were just kind of like, and then, or people would say things to me like, your English is really good.
Yes.
And
God.
I had that,
like, but then.
And this was not that long ago.
No, this was like within the last 10 years. And, on the flip side.
We got to do better, people.
Yeah. When I tell people that I'm
saying.
Lebanese, all of a sudden they want to pitch me things like refugee stories and that, and, the refugee cause is something very close to my heart, but I am not a refugee.
Right.
My family were Maronite, which is a Catholic sect of Lebanese people. But, they'll start talking to me about, things about the Muslim community. And you're just like, because we, have so little exposure to people through television and film and every other form of media, people form their assumptions. And then because there is this interest in like trying to connect or trying to break through, they go directly to those stereotypes and try to use those to connect. And so part of what we're trying to show is that, you can be a lot of different things. That being Latina doesn't mean one thing, that being African American doesn't mean one thing, that being Middle Eastern, that being LGBTQ, that being from a certain part of the country
doesn't put you in that.
Right, that growing up in a trailer park, you may have very different experiences. And so, we've never questioned whether or not old white guys could tell the stories of everybody else. And so,
sometimes they can't.
Yeah, no
Just
one
saying.
asked for, 65 years if a guy could make a tampon commercial. So, it's funny because you'll get the question now like, well, but, can women do action? Can women do? And it's like, yes, of course they can.
Because and I was thinking about this when you were talking about it too, is that for so long, even just with women, I remember that there were no roles. We could either be prostitutes or maids or like some type of subservient wife or something like that. There was not, so it hasn't even really been that long that even just gender diversity in a lot of things. So this is kind of revolutionary. Like, do you feel the pressure of like really trying to bust down this door? Because I feel like it is a door to kind of bust down. You think, I think everyone out there just assumes, oh, I know this, or I think it'll be fine. I don't think it's that. Just like people don't really realize that racism is still alive and well, I think they don't understand the biases that we are continuously being fed. So, do you feel like, yes, I can do this? Or,
100%.
This is the time?
For not only, it's funny. So when we started thinking about this a couple of years ago, there were not the same kind of tailwinds that we have now. The world has changed a lot in the last couple of years. And we're really excited to have, started this process before that, so that right now we can be in a place where we can talk about actively, packaging projects where we've built this community where we, when we launched it, so we incubated the community over the summer with a group of about 50 people. And we're really lucky that we're, based on our past careers, able to bring in great partners. Like, we did projects for National Geographic and for Fox and pulling, again, through the community, because it is so important that, you don't just get one or two people through and then pat yourself on the back and call it a success. That you're encouraging everyone to then look around you and who else can you bring with you, right? And so we had these projects over the summer, and then we launched Represent a few weeks back. And within the first week, I'm not allowed to talk about our exact numbers, but there were so many people. 70% female, 65% people of color, representing all 50 states and about 15 countries.
Wow, that's fantastic. All 50 states.
Yeah, all 50 states.
That's amazing.
And
fantastic.
How did you get the word out?
It was quiet, again, when you're in a test, and this is where a little bit of our tech background comes into play, because we're we don't want to go too loud, because we want to make sure that we're bringing people in at a pace where we're testing and we make sure the community can handle it, and there is human eyeballs, or our human eyeballs, that go on every single new registration. So it's not 100% automated, because in creative you can't automate things 100%, right?
You shouldn't.
You
anyways.
So one of the things that started to excite us were the amount of time that people were putting. We have a question that just basically says to, tell us what makes your point of view unique. And people were writing these long, beautiful, really important things, and some funny stuff and some interesting stuff, and people who had been working and who had careers already, but were I'm looking to get to the next step, or that sort, and so it's been really exciting to feel the energy of that community. And then at the same time, kind of around town here, the people and the companies we've worked with for 15 plus years are saying, hey, we need these kinds of stories.
Oh, good.
And the question has always been, how do you maintain the quality, right?
Right.
And I think that's where
yes.
our team comes in that we've had long careers at companies like Warner Brothers and Netflix, and that we know what it takes to tell a good story and then to bring it to an audience. And so being able to have that as kind of a full cycle, and one of the reasons that we undertook the company at such a scale, in having a studios division and a partners division and a community, is because we needed all of these pieces for it to work, right? But we needed to make sure that we weren't relying on somebody else to come in and fill one of those roles for us.
Because then you become hostage
to
something else. I think that's amazing that you're able to keep it control over it.
So going back to my other question was, so let's say I have an idea and it's great, and I go to you and you go, oh, this is great, we're going to do this, so do you find a studio to partner and then they pay the bill? Or how does that work?
So it depends on the project and how far along it is, right? There, some people bring a project and they've shot a pilot already themselves, and they have a script. Or some people just come and they're like, I have this idea.
Okay.
And so what the economics of it look like depend on how much investment needs to go in, where the project needs to live. Because there's some things that make perfect sense for an SVOD service. There's other things where you're this is naturally a broadcast series. There's other things where it's okay, we don't do a ton of unscripted, but we have a couple of really interesting unscripted projects right now. We have one young woman, she moved to the US from Cuba a decade ago. She just got her PhD in physics, and she's an adventure photographer and an adventurer, right? And so she's like the Anthony Bourdain meets Neil deGrasse Tyson. And so we're developing this cool and interesting project, but she didn't come and say, oh, I have a script and an outline for a show. We were introduced to her, and I was first of all, she's a genius, and super charismatic and interesting, and it was the world needs the benefit of this voice. So then our team will put some resources into developing that into a project. If it's something that all they need is an introduction to the right place, that looks very different than if we're investing in the process.
It could be a lot of multitude of different things. So don't be afraid to submit if you have an idea, or if you don't really even know what it is. This is just my idea. Can you kind of help me navigate this or figure this out?
Right. And there's
That's good.
I think you asked back to the question about how do people find out. Creative people tend to have other creative people in their networks in some capacity. And so one of the things that we did was just kind of spread the word among some really talented creatives that work in different areas that we know. And so they would put things on their Twitter or that. And then there's a couple of hashtags that people use, hashtag own voices on Twitter is a great one for people that are really looking to tell interesting and authentic stories. And so news of our company started to be spread through hashtags like that.
Okay.
And then we were really lucky that Amy Poehler's Smart Girls came and profiled us, you know, and they're a fantastic community that supports women across all different industries, and they've got a really significant social media reach. And so being profiled by them,
Wow, that's great.
was really helpful as well. And so, but you know, we every day it's like there's more and more and more people coming in, and also in a really exciting way, there's more and more people from around the industry that are saying like, how can I get involved and how can I help?
Oh,
And
very good.
one of the things, because we come from the business, that you know is there's a lot of really well-intentioned people who have very little time. So we've tried to set up ways for them to drop in. We do like 5-minute mentorships where we basically do videos and content series with people talking about like their biggest lesson that they've learned, the mistakes they see other people making, some of that kind of stuff. You know, or if people want to do something more intensive, we've had some television writers offer to read scripts from new writers and that. So I mean, really, I think us being flexible helps us to work with a lot of different people without saying like you absolutely have to fit our mold, because that's just, you know, that's not going to help to change anything.
All right, I have another question, but we have to do a commercial really quick.
Yes.
All right.
Commercial break.
Commercial break. We want to let you know that today's show is being brought to you by Zavala Law Firm. Attorney Evie Zavala has been achieving exceptional results for his clients facing DUI and other charges for over 15 years. Evie has earned a reputation as the attorney to turn to in difficult and even seemingly unwinnable cases. His unique legal talent and courtroom intuitions obtain stunning results, vigorously protecting the rights and the interests of his clients. If you need criminal defense, contact Zavala Law Firm at 818-987-7010, 818-987-7010, or visit www.zavalalawfirm.com. And all that information is on our website, so you can check it out there.
Front and center.
Yeah,
Click
front
on it,
and center,
and you can
yes.
get right to their website.
Okay, so, oh, God. I forgot what I was going to say. No, you were, oh, is there anything that you can tell us without telling us too much that we would be able to forecast, that you could say, okay, next fall or next, you know, something's coming down the pike, without, you know, how people can tell but not tell?
Yeah.
Well, let me think very carefully about all my
I get it. I get it.
I would say there are 2 television projects that next year we're pretty excited about the home that they're going to find.
Okay.
And then there's a film project that will probably take a little bit longer to actually, you know, get out the door just because of the amount of production required. But that one's about 18 months out.
Do you guys, I know this is early, you guys are very early in this process, but you seem to be moving quick, you know, rather vigorously forward.
Ask all my gray hair.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's so great. That's awesome. That
Yeah.
speaks to your team and the
Yeah.
connections and your integrity and all that stuff. So that's
And
really
the
great.
need. The
yeah,
need
and
is
the
obviously
need.
there.
But
Yeah.
I think I
Excitement.
think more so the fact that they have relationships, which
Yeah.
really speaks to, you know, people paying attention. But have you guys ever thought of having your own network?
It is certainly something that we've talked about. At this point, I want to focus on the content itself rather than and finding the right distribution partner where it already has an audience. But at this point, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's on the table. I mean, we've talked about our own networks, our own, you know, book imprints. Our, you know, there's a lot. I think in the future, you know, obviously, my dream is that the like inclusion piece of this business, you know, within 5 to 10 years becomes really unnecessary, right? Because the industry as a whole has embraced it. But then I think what we become is a really like interesting, thoughtful home for entertaining creative from a really diverse set of voices.
Yeah, I don't think it'll ever go away, the inclusion. I don't think it'll ever go away. It's just the way our society is made up. Look what just happened in D.C. It's just the way we are.
I think maybe 50 to 100 years if we continue on this. I'm trying to be optimistic.
I don't know if I'll be alive.
Well, yeah. Well, I might be.
Felicia.
I'm going to be living to 100.
Oh, because she's going to be a tree.
I am going to be a tree. But 50 to 100 years from now, we would hope that, I would say, at that point, maybe we wouldn't have to worry about it. But if we plant those seeds now, I think it's going to take that amount of time in order for it to be not a discussion,
we can't
not
even,
a particular topic
I
in discussion.
disagree because...
You think it's going to be faster?
No, I don't think it's ever going to happen. Because 50 years ago, or when was the Civil Rights Movement? When was, you know, like...
1964.
Right, so that was not that long ago.
It wasn't that long
and people
ago.
were still hoping that we could, you know, all get along and just not be racist against each other. And that has not changed.
I think it's changed a little. I'm going to say a little. I mean, listen, racism is still alive and well in this country, but I do believe that things are different today than they were in 1954.
I think we're going back to 1954.
Oh, well,
I don't think
pray Jesus we don't.
I feel
we got to get out there and vote.
I know. Yes, midterm elections, please. I feel like the energy and the culture has us going backwards a little bit. Even though there have been the Me Too movements and all that stuff that are giving a platform for women to be, front and center and up in your face.
Yeah.
And so
but I think we have to keep that momentum
going. Yeah, and this is wonderful. Yeah. This is where they kind of just are picking up from that and running, so that they can't ever. I'm sorry to say this, but you can't ever stop.
Well, I think you have to be for the next 50 to 100 years.
You got to mentor the next generation and be like, listen.
Well, that's it, though. It's a generational thing, right? And, the one benefit that I think we have as an industry, apart from, some of the very vocal, but who I really do believe are some of the minority voices of hate in this country, is that the media and entertainment and overall creative industries do tend to be by nature more progressive in thinking and more inclusive. Right. And, and at this point, there's a lot of people who are starting to recognize that they have a platform. I mean, Taylor Swift, who stayed apolitical for, the entirety of her career, was responsible for, I think, 65,000 new voter registrations in Tennessee this week.
Taylor Swift.
Fantastic.
And as people recognize that they have that platform and they have the ability to make change, but, like I said before, they don't want to put a ton of work into it.
Yeah.
So part of what we're trying to do is say, like, you don't have to. We'll make it really, really easy for you.
Right. Yeah.
And then there's a real market need, right? So by 2020, 52% of Gen Z, which is like the under 25s at this point, do not identify as primarily Caucasian. So, like, if you're just even looking at from a purely market perspective, it doesn't make sense to be
everybody is
focusing on stereotypes, because your audiences will reject it. And so what appeals to different people around the business about us depends on, but like, I know who doesn't really care and who has to, who I have to make that case to. And I'm willing to just, there are so many different reasons that, it's like, I'm happy to have that conversation with whoever we need to at any given time. But
would there be a project that would come to you, an idea, a script, or a project that you would say, oh no, we can't touch that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Anything that's exploitative. So anything that is,
exploitative to anyone, or?
Yeah. I mean, any project that treats any one of its characters not as a fully developed human being. So like projects that involve women as accessories, projects, there's projects that have like an autistic character, who's just there to be the straight man. Like any of that kind of stuff is an absolute no-go for me. Every project that we do has to be thoughtful, inclusive, and have every character represented as a full and complete human being. And so, that's kind of like the very basic, yeah. Things that include, exploitative, sexual violence against women, like that's an absolute.
And you mean that in
sexual violence against men?
So yeah, exploitative sexual violence against anyone, I should say.
But that, you mean that in a scripted format, like. Let's say it's like somebody's story and it's unscripted. It's a documentary and it's really like,
but that's not exploitative to me, right? Like if it's actually a critical part of the story, but if it's like there to be, edgy or gratuitous, then it's a no for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah. And I think
you can't send her that script. No.
There's enough out there in the world, and there's this hunger for stories right now, especially like positive, entertaining, uplifting stories, particularly for young women. There's enough people that want to do, graphic, gratuitous, whatever it is, like that doesn't need to be us. There's enough of that in the marketplace. Absolutely. But, ask any mom what, they want for their tween daughters to be watching. And, one of the things we hear a lot is there's a lot of stuff that is so cynical and so negative, which is a real defining quality of past generations, where it's like the kind of anti-parent, everyone sucks, everything.
That's why we stopped watching Disney. No shade against Disney, but like some of their characters and their storylines were like making parents look really stupid. Like, oh, these are just the dumb parents that don't understand. And the kids were like, doing all this foolishness. And I was like, why are you watching this? And then my kids started talking to me crazy. And I was like, am I going to have to beat you because you're watching the Disney show?
Well,
does that make any sense?
I wouldn't go that far and say that is Disney's fault. But
I just didn't like what they were putting out there.
It was definitely the trend in content for young people.
Yes.
I think also what I find a little interesting too is, and I'm glad you said that about teens, is I think you need to elevate the conversation with teens. I think that we're having like the not the dumb conversation, but
No,
we're
like
we're
almost like dumbing them down.
You were
Yes.
dumbing them
We're
down.
not treating them as
Right.
the adults that they are about
'Cause
to
they're-
be,
yeah,
and
'cause
that they're
they're-
needing to understand. They need to have more adult type conversations.
Well,
and,
not even
and be
adult.
included.
I'm not even saying that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there are more teenagers I find and that I've come in contact with that are so much more mature for their age. Not that they're adults,
Right.
But they're a lot more settled. They're not. There's the group for the what's that TV show 13 or what? No, not
13 Reasons Why.
Yeah, there's a place for that, but there's also a place for a group of. There should be a show of a group of teens that are doing the best work in the world,
Right.
And that you're promoting that as well.
Right.
It can't
because
just
they're very thoughtful,
right. You
and
can't
they're
just put
not
everybody
just-
and go. All the teenagers in the world are thinking about suicide and are
Right.
having sex in the pool
Right.
and are doing it. Like, no, that's not the truth
Yeah.
for all teenagers in the world.
Right.
So thoughtfulness and young ladies. I was just having a conversation with someone. This young lady she's just a star in her world, but there's nowhere where she can identify that on TV because they're just girls that just want to hook up, or it's like, no, that's not my.
Yeah, I'm done with the
that's
hooking
not
up girls.
How I identify.
Right, yeah.
So I think it's great that you create, think of that inclusiveness across the board, because we kind of just, I feel like the programming for young people and even women, and the programming has gotten like really sluggish and really dumb and very really, that's not what we're talking about these
And
days.
I think that's why people aren't really watching network anymore. I mean, there are very few.
Well,
I can
network or
count
cable
on,
for that matter.
3 fingers how many like network shows I watch. I'm definitely more into like Netflix and Hulu and their originals.
But Netflix is
and-
13 Reasons.
and
They're not.
But I mean, not all of their content is like that. But I feel like those areas have different content. They speak to different types of people.
Right.
They are, I think, a little bit more diverse than what you see on network or what has been posed.
I think network is trying. I mean, I'm
I
not
think
gonna
it's
throw my
trying.
word out.
Yeah, I
They're
don't
trying,
think it's,
but I think they're just
yeah.
keeping it too in the box.
Yes.
Well, and they have a different audience too, right?
Yeah.
So and they serve and they have a different business model. So like when you have ad-supported content, that's a different business model in terms of what has to be acquired, how it has to perform, and all of that than you do if you have something that's on a subscription service that has really different economics around it.
Right.
And so to your point about young people today, they have access to so much information.
Right.
And so, and they're much more interested and kind of aware of the world. And they're also very thoughtful about like issues of advocacy, right?
Yes.
Whether it's racism or climate, I mean, they're the ones who are going to inherit
Absolutely.
the absolute disaster that's being created in this country right now, but they're aware of it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why they're a lot more thoughtful than, so that's why I think some of the kind of, snarky teen stuff, like it just isn't resonating.
No.
with them.
Yeah.
But
it's not working anymore.
One of the things, that we look to is like, I am so incredibly inspired by so many of the young people that we have in our network or that we've met, because the stories that they come with, they don't have anything to do with like random hookups. They don't have anything, and it's not some like old established person's view of what life is like for a young person, and they have stories that are optimistic and hopeful, and and they can, and then it's not just like personal narrative. I mean, there's fantasy stories, there's adventure stories, there's mystery stuff. I mean, there's such great content
That's
in
great.
there. So I look at that and I'm like, this is an absolute treasure trove.
Oh my God.
So does it give you
incredible
hope?
stories.
So it does give you hope.
Absolutely. And I
Okay,
mean, I
good.
have an 8-year-old daughter, and so, I think about her a lot when I'm thinking about what kind of stuff I want to invest our time into. And to me, it's the kind of stuff that I can be proud to say to her that we were
That's
involved
excellent.
in this. In some
You're going to
way.
grow exponentially.
Yes.
That's the hope.
I feel it in my bones. You're going to grow exponentially, and
Yeah.
we're going to be like, can we contact Kathryn's assistant, because Kathryn's not available right now. May I take a message? I'll be like, what? She knew us
Absolutely not.
when.
Do you have any
Always, yeah.
questions or comments?
No, we just
on-
have a comment from Mark who said, I only eat fried chicken.
Wow.
Well, people, because that's how they, black people only eat fried chicken with watermelon. They don't have an evolved, and if they have an educated experience, or they have a,
it's not out there.
it's you're trying to be white, or you're trying, like, no, this is our experience.
Right.
Yeah.
You
and
know,
you shouldn't take anything from it.
It's-
Yeah.
yeah,
And it
it's
shouldn't be
just-
negative.
Exactly.
We have
It's
to
like
be able
when you
to
tell
change
someone
it.
you speak
Yeah.
so well. Well,
Yeah.
how else was I supposed to speak? Like, listen, I'll just tell this really funny story. I was pregnant with my firstborn. My doctor was in vacationing in Mexico, and I was in preterm, serious labor. So they rushed me to the hospital. I fainted, all this stuff. The on-staff doctor, I won't say the hospital, the on-staff doctor comes in to check on me. She says, you're going to have this baby. We're going to have to contact your doctor. And she's like, in Mexico vacationing, right? So she comes in the room, and I won't yell because we're on a mic, but she immediately raises her voice. My mom's in the room. My husband's there. My mother-in-law wasn't there yet. It's just the three of us, and we're figuring out, oh my goodness, I'm going to have this baby today? Like, he's not supposed to come for like another month and a half. And so she's like, hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. And I just want to let you know, this is the doctor on staff, that we are trying. And my mother looked at her like if she could rip her head off. And my husband goes, why are you yelling? Like, my husband was so angry. Why are you yelling? He goes, well, is her first language English? And I was laying there
like
thinking,
you were deaf and didn't speak
exactly,
English?
deaf and dumb.
Because everyone knows that, especially if it's not your first language, louder.
Yes, yell.
It's magic.
And I thought, I looked at her and I'm like, I think I was so stunned. And my husband's like, yes, it's English. Like, what are you, like, he was just, we were so panicked. Obviously, you're in that emergency moment. And then this doctor comes in and I was like, is she
crazy?
What?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
Was she the one that was going to be delivering your baby?
No, she didn't.
Oh, okay.
My doctor actually came back. And
because I'd have been like, you don't get to come in here.
Don't touch me. Right. Do not touch me. No, I was able to, make it the following night following morning. And my doctor arrived, thankfully, and was able to deliver my son. But it was crazy.
Well, it's the
The
stereotype.
implications and bias in healthcare and all these other places.
We were just talking
yes.
about that
reports
last.
lately. About Black women not being believed in hospitals and suffering all of these additional consequences because either there is a perception that they have a different pain tolerance. I mean, and this has been like report after
Well, and
report.
it was in the bill that we were talking about. The research that was done was that medical students in 2016 all still had this bias that they believe that, and you're like, these are people that are in their early 20s. Like, what? How are they? What?
Yeah.
And why?
I just want to give a shout out to Careers in Entertainment. My husband just participated in that last week, where they take folks from all areas of the entertainment industry, and they do like a workshop for local high schools, and they bus them in, and they took them to Paramount Pictures, and it's put up by the Will and Jada Smith Foundation, and they just do from producers to look behind the scenes, in front of the camera, off the camera, in the camera. It was just writers. It was such a great thing. My husband participated as a costume designer, and I forget her name. Her name is Anne. She's the designer for Handmaid's Tale. I forget her name. But anyway, so they spoke on costume designing in the industry, and it was so great because 90% of the students were minorities, African American and Hispanic. And I told my husband, what a great opportunity for these people to see a Latino guy get up there and talk about his success in the industry and working on a very popular show and doing the most. So shout out to them for doing that and just exposing these kids to things that they can do, and that there's more to life.
That's fantastic. But again, it's here locally. So, I mean, I think that's cool. But again, I applaud your efforts for bringing everybody in. I think this is a fantastic idea. Thank you. And I'm so proud of you and so excited to see where this goes.
Is so exciting.
So what, because we are like about out of time, but what are the key main things that you want to like let people know?
So if you or anyone that you know is an aspiring creative in any form, go to heretorepresent.com, HERETO represent.com. Okay. And just, it's a really simple registration, and that's the easiest way to connect with us. Okay. And then the other thing that I would just ask is, be conscious of how you're looking at all of your content and look at it with a really critical eye. And if you're not happy with something, you should let the producers, the network, whatever know. Social media is a great place for that. If you see the stereotypes, if you see
as
the
a consumer,
as a consumer,
okay.
I mean, we are all consumers of media. Brands and their advertising are one of the absolute worst offenders. And so, when you see that, feel free to let them know, because that's how we start to see change.
And someone just posted on Facebook, yes, Nickelodeon and Disney need more intelligent, sophisticated, educated, and classier representation for Americans in the best storytelling possible. That's from Donna. So
We
we're
agree.
going to get it. We're going to get it from
Yes.
Original Media Ventures.
Yes.
Yay!
Yes, we're
We are
so
so
proud
proud
of
of you.
you.
This is wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you for
so
coming.
much.
Thank you so much for
Of
letting me come.
course, we're going
Yes.
to keep you. We're going to stay connected to Kathryn so we can tell you about
Yes.
everything that's coming down the pike
Yes.
for them and
go
where
look
to
at it for yourself. And
support
if you're interested
all
or
of
you
it.
know someone that is
Yeah.
interested, go out there and do it. So
Yeah.
thank you so much
we
for
want to thank
joining
Kathryn
us.
again for joining us, and we hope you've been informed, educated, and entertained today on our show. Catch us Monday. We have a great show on breast cancer awareness.
Yes.
I'll be sharing my personal story.
Yes.
And have a great rest of the week.
Bye.
You're listening to Table for Five with Felicia and Annette, only on LA Talk Radio.